2023 has been and gone, and now it's time for us to take a look back at what Big Finish had to offer during Doctor Who's 60th anniversary year. There was a lot going on this year. You've got Once and Future celebrating the 60th anniversary itself with loads of different doctors, companions, side characters, villains, what you expect from an anniversary special, really. And then some hidden gems there as well, like a certain release that I know is both of our favorites of the year that we weren't expecting to be just as good as it was. And I mean, it's pretty early on the tier list. You find out what we're talking about very
Pretty much
shortly.
instantly, I would say, isn't it? This one.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine most people know what we're talking about already anyway. But, we'll come to it. How did you feel about 2023 as a whole?
I think it was a lot more solid compared to 2022. I think 2022, there were a few more stinkers, like the
Mm.
Doctor of War Unbound stuff, whereas I think 2023, it maintained a consistent level.
I think a
Um,
lot of it was just pretty good, wasn't it?
yeah,
There wasn't as many standouts, but
yes.
like not standouts in a positive way or a negative way.
I think that was my issue. I was always hungry for, okay, this is going to be the breakaway releases. There wasn't any bar, I guess the one in January where that was like a
Yeah.
certified that's a breakaway release above everything else. Everything was pretty much on the same page.
Yeah, I imagine this tier list is going to look fairly uh, filled out in the middle
Hmm.
and then not so much on either of the extremes, really. I mean, that's my prediction of how this is going to map out. But yeah, I think, overall a solid year, but often going into releases, is this going to wow me? Is this going to be the one? And then coming out of thinking, that was good. I enjoyed myself, but I wasn't fully satisfied by many of these. But yeah, I mean, we'll be back in less than a year's time to talk about 2024,
I
see if
mean,
that changes it. We're
we'll we'll be back in the sort of end of June, July to talk about our top five of the year so far, seeing what doing it this year as well. That'd be quite
Hmm,
cool.
yeah.
Um,
I feel like this year's going better at the moment.
I would say so. I think there's been more heavy hitters this year than there was in 2023. But shall we take a look at what 2023 had in store for our ears?
Let's go for it.
Okay, let's go for it.
Tier list is loading up. Here
Here
we
it
go.
is.
It's a big one.
Oh yeah, it
Not our
is.
biggest, but
We've done the monthly range, so you can check out that tier list if you want to see how that went down.
yeah.
But this is the 2023 one.
All 75 Doctor Who related releases are here. I believe it's 75. I hope I've got that right. That's off
I
the
mean,
top of
that
my head,
sounds
remembering from all the numbering I did while making those files.
sounds about right. So, do you want to explain the categories for this tier list? Because that's your thing.
Yeah, we love a good pun here, don't we?
We do.
So, yeah, most of these have a pun on some title of a story from this year or box set. Except for Not Heard at the bottom there. That's just a generic category for the odd release that neither of us have listened to. Some of which we've picked up, funnily enough, but just not got around to, despite it being nearly halfway through 2024 at this
Mhm.
point. You know how it is. Something goes on the pile, something else goes on top of it, something else goes on top of that, and some things just slip through the cracks a bit. But I think we've got a good amount here.
I think we've
Uh,
got a good this section of this year covered. I think
yeah,
about
certainly
90%.
all the highlights.
Yeah,
Really.
the main ones.
Yeah, like a lot of these are just included because, for other people who have listened to them, if they want to do this tier list, if you want to do this tier list, the link will be in the description.
And
Uh,
I think this tier list is a good sort of indication of um, other listening habits of stuff that we probably might have just briefly talked about over the course of 2023, but not in depth as such. So it gives
yeah,
people a chance to know our thoughts on I guess, not the main bulk of the year.
And also just a place to have all those thoughts in one place, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, at the bottom of the tier list, we have In the Bleak Bottom tier, a little play on words there with In the Bleak Midwinter. Then we have Far From Great, uh, parodying the Seventh Doctor box set Far From Home. Listen in Hope, which playing with the Ninth Doctor box set Travel in Hope. Conflicted but interesting. This is where we're starting to get to the good ones now, but still there's a couple of things holding it back. This one is a reference to the Fifth Doctor box set Conflicts of Interest, and then A Genius for Storytelling. This one is the really good stories, but not quite the very best just yet. This one is a reference to A Genius for War from Once and Future. And finally, the Sixth Doctor, Purity Unbound, gets the name of the top spot. It probably won't get the top spot, spoiler alert, for Quality Unbound, for the ones that have no limits that we adore wholeheartedly and unequivocally. We'll see how many make it up there. Shall we begin with The Dead Star, an audio novel? I say, shall we begin?
Yes.
You've not listened to this one.
I have it, but again, I've not listened to it. It was one you made me pick up, but I
still highly recommend you get around to listening to it because it's a very strong one. We love the audio novels, don't we?
We do. I think it's a range that doesn't really get spoken about. And the ones I've listened to, I've really adored and are some of the best audios of that year.
I love getting some long form storytelling and, really getting to get lost in a story and the twists and turns. And I think that's what audiobooks and these audio novels can really provide when done as well as this one is. It has some fascinating sequences involving very miniature black holes. You've got the cosmic threat of one huge black hole making its way through the solar system. It's very 60s. I adore it. I think it's Quality Unbound.
Is it the best Michael Troughton story?
Yeah, I'd say so.
There we go. That's a high recommendation there.
He does a great job reading it as well. I think, he captures the voice and feel of the characters while it not quite being on the level of John Coleshaw when it comes to impressions. I think he's got enough of the character in there for it to not bother me when he's, for example, reading Polly's lines or something. And he does a few different voices in there as well to mix things up. And just the prose. He's got a wonderful voice, so just listening to him doing the prose is great. And of course, his Second Doctor is brilliant too.
By Kate Orman, a name well known for people from the Wilderness Years, so an exciting thing in that regard.
And I mean, I can't comment on the quality compared to those stories because I've not read any of them, but I think it's safe for me to say she's not lost her touch. If she has, then I can't imagine how good those stories are.
Yeah.
But now we're moving to slightly less enthusiastic story, Double, part 1 of Double. This is a Torchwood monthly range 2-parter featuring the Autons set in the 1970s, starring Louise Jameson. And it feels like this should have been a lot better than it was.
Oh, it's a real stinker. I think that really kind of... This was the first release I listened to of the year. And I was like, oh, this is really putting 2023 into a good place. And I was a bit concerned.
I wouldn't say it's a stinker, but I certainly feel like, there's a level of hype going into it that's not...
Well, you look at the cover and you think, great. But the covers have nothing to do with the story, which I guess is a lot of the Torchwood releases.
It's very much more a concept, like an image, isn't it? Captured, rather than a representation of what the story's going to be like sometimes. I mean, I'd probably put it in far from great. I don't think it's very bottom.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, go on.
Yeah. Now we come to a good one. A very
This is
good
the
one.
release we're on about. This is
A very,
the
very, very good one.
this is the creme de la creme of the year. Um, we
I
were
think
we were hoping something would beat it, but nothing could come close to it.
No, sadly not. But at the same time, I very much appreciate that this release happened. It's very special. Again, it's long form storytelling. It's 4 hours, well, over 4 hours actually. You know, this single story written by Tim Foley about River Song getting trapped in a house throughout, 100 years or so of its history, going from the early 20th century to the early 21st. There's a mystery to be solved. There's character relationships to be navigated. There's a wonderful butler type character who assists River Song, played by Mark Elstob.
Hugo, isn't it? I think.
Yeah, Hugo. I mean, not quite butler. I think that's painting him in the wrong light, but yeah, he's pretty much River's companion for this, really. Yeah.
And it explains how she became Professor River Song.
It's a wonderful journey for River to go on in this story.
It's very intimate.
Yeah. It's very much her learning to slow down and take the time to appreciate things a bit more.
If you like Old Lang Syne, the Ninth Doctor adventure, this is essentially Old Lang Syne, but
On
3 hours
steroids.
longer. Yeah, a lot better, I would say. But I love Old Lang Syne, but this is
something else.
this is perfection.
Quality unbound.
Without a shadow of a doubt.
One of the few big finishes to move me to tears.
Wow.
I think there's a lot to be said about where this story goes.
You just don't want it to end, and I think that's the powerful nature of this story.
I think we were certainly a bit apprehensive at first because it didn't seem like the most action-packed, exciting premise. And on top of that, it's 4 hours long. So you think, that's a worrying combination. It's either going to be really, really good, or if it's just okay, it's not going to be okay overall because we'll be sitting there for 4 hours of it. But thankfully, it was the former. It's so blooming good. Definitely worth picking up if you have not already. You will not regret it.
And then we move on to a box set that just happened and it just disappeared. It's one of the forgotten releases of the year, and that is 8th Doctor Time War 5, Cass.
Perhaps the Time War rewrote it a bit. It's ended up with the same fate as Ballista Companion, it seems. Just weirdly slipping through the cracks, I suppose. Even more so when we've got what looks like the start of a new Time War arc with what's
Uncharted.
That Uncharted, that's it. I was thinking Unbound. I'm like, I know it's not Unbound.
Yeah.
But when you think of something and you just can't shake that out your head. Yeah. I knew it was on something. But yeah, that's called Uncharted 1. So this looks like a weird, false start? I'm not sure how to describe. Well, I mean, it'll still be important, but it felt like the start of something. And then it looks like we're getting another start of something in the next box set. I mean, we'll see how that plays out. But
I think it's
fine. It's probably
Listening Hope.
Yeah, I think so. I enjoyed it for the most part, but can't say
it was great
I feel
enjoying
any.
this new TARDIS team with Alex and Cass. That was quite cool.
Yeah, they're definitely the highlight of it, having them together. But yeah, story-wise, just nothing jumps out at me as all that memorable. Class, I've not picked this one up.
I can safely say not heard.
Sorry, Class fans. I mean, I've not even watched any of the TV series apart from episode 1. So
wow.
Yeah. Torchwood Double back again.
I
part
think
2.
Far From Great again. I think it's same level. Nothing.
I remember liking one of them more than the other. But I
Yeah.
can't remember which way round it was this far out. So
Hmm.
yeah, they can go together.
Short trips?
Did you pick it up?
No. I wanted to
neither.
for Valerie and the John Coleshaw story, but no, thanks.
Yeah, I think that's the thing with some. I say box set loosely because it's download only, but when you're paying that large amount for 6 stories in this case, and you only want 2 of them, really, you're sort of. It's not much of a drawing factor, even when those 2 stories do seem quite exciting. It's a shame. Shades of Fear. This is the finale of Series 2 of the Ninth Doctor Adventures. Series 2 was a bit of a slog.
It was
I don't
rough.
think this changed too much of that. A lot of 1-hour stories that just felt like they weren't going anywhere.
Mm-hmm. They felt like they run out of steam very quickly.
Yeah. Probably a Far From Great again.
Yeah, I'd agree, because I think there's better Ninth Doctor coming up.
I've not picked up the Last Love Song of Susie Costello.
Me neither. Double kind of put me off Torchwood for the year.
Oh, I mean, yeah, I've got quite a few Torchwood from this year coming up, so don't worry, Torchwood fans, I've got you covered. The Demon Song now.
I like this one more than you, I feel.
Yeah, I think so. This is where Stephen Noonan's ears are perking up a bit if he's watching this video.
Definitely
Hello,
is.
Stephen.
We love you. And I
He's watching it
apologize.
specifically to see where this ends up.
I apologize for what Luke's going to say out of his mouth.
Oh, dear. The Demon Song 2-part story that starts this one, I think is pretty strong.
I think it's one of the strongest
no.
in the range, to be honest. I love the idea of the first Doctor coming into our modern world.
Especially in the 60th anniversary year. That feels right.
Yes. And just him navigating a post-pandemic world, which...
It's very much the London and Camden of the
Star Beast, I guess.
2023. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, again, Camden, it's appeared in 2 60th anniversary.
There's a bit of trivia. There's a bit of trivia there.
Yeah, that's a nice little background to it. And yeah, it's wonderful how it treats it like it would any other future or alien world in the 60s. How they're reacting to everything, all the new technology, but it's tongue-in-cheek with it because obviously we know this, it's almost mundane to us. I think there's a lot to love about
Lauren
those early
Cornelius
scenes. Yeah.
gives her best performance, not only as Dodo, because this story gives Dodo a lot of agency, but also she's playing the siren creature within it, which is brilliantly eerie and scary.
Yeah, it's lots of fun. It's got a few scares in there as well. It just doesn't quite come together in conclusion.
Yes, it sort of is a bit of a shouty match, isn't it, towards the end, but still a very solid entry.
A lot of characters saying what's going on.
Yeah. It's kind of doing the audio cardinal sin, isn't it?
Yeah. Which is a shame. And then the interesting incident, I wish I liked more because
it sounds like your
I was
perfect
very
cup of
excited.
tea, doesn't it? Sort of, a post World War II.
Seaside
England.
setting, very Quatermass inspired. But yeah, the story just didn't quite live up to those expectations. So it's similar to Double in the sense that you've got all the right elements, so it's even more disappointing when they don't come together into something good. Probably, I'd say Listen in Hope or Conflicted but Interesting.
See, I'd want to go second tier for me, genius storytelling.
Oh, come on, you can't go that high.
All right, I'll go conflicted but interesting. I apologize, Stephen.
Stephen's our friend, but he respects that.
Yeah.
You say it how it is. I hope he does. Sorry, Stephen, if you don't.
All the time in space.
I say it as it is. Ben sugarcoats things.
No, I'm very truthful.
Yeah. All the time in space, as we were saying.
I love this box set. I think it's my favourite of the 11th Doctor stuff of that year. I think that this nails it's experimental with the first story, especially
and
when
the third story.
Yes, the third story it feels very Moffat in the best way possible. It has the way Moffat views the Doctor as a character, and I think Moffat as a writer gets who the Doctor is, and I think Curiosity Shop is that, and it's a wonderful. If you look back at it, this is sort of a Series 7 style box set. It's the same time the 50th anniversary was happening, and Curiosity Shop feels like a little mini. Hey, the anniversary's coming up. And
Yeah, it definitely feels right for both 2023 when it came out and 2013 when it's kind of
mimicking.
Yeah, contemporary too, I suppose. Or yeah. Yeah, I do really like this box set as well. I think the Yearn is a bit of a sore patch in the middle.
Yeah.
But certainly doesn't affect my enjoyment overall.
Especially when we've got the grander picture now. We've listened to Victory of the Doctor and how the Yearn connects. It's one you pass on when it was released, but now you're like, oh, it's quite a key player within the actual series itself. So I think that's my argument why it should be a little bit higher than what you're probably going to say.
I would say a genius for storytelling.
I'll allow that.
Because I think the Yearn is what holds it off the top. Even though it does come into play later, I think the story itself still isn't quite there. It's nothing bad, but when you compare it to the quality of the rest of the 11th Doctor Chronicles up to this point, it does sort of stick out a little bit.
Yeah.
I love this box set. And also, I like it in hindsight now that we've reached the end, sort of having these more regular adventures, because that's the thing, when you have this more limited run, it makes you savor these moments a little bit more. You know, these are the good times for the Doctor and Valerie before things start getting a bit traumatic. So, you know, I think that helps a lot as well. The fact that these are a bit more less arc heavy episodes, you know, more just, I would say, the Doctor and Valerie having fun, but there's not so much fun for Valerie in the final story.
Yeah, Curiosity Shop.
Yeah.
So much so we get a bonus little story because of it.
Yeah, dealing
more
with the
on
trauma.
that later.
But yeah, I think I do appreciate even more in hindsight, just, you know, getting to enjoy spending time with these characters.
One of the low points, so from one of the highs to one of the lows. Now, the Third Doctor Adventures is a range me and Luke absolutely adore, and it's one of the jewel in the crowns of Big Finish. This,
so it stings even more when this happens.
This feels like an absolute kick in the teeth because tonally it doesn't know what it wants. Is it trying to be the Third Doctor, much like what Demon Song did with the First Doctor? Is this doing the Third Doctor in sort of our contemporary world, or is it bringing Jo into the 70s again? And sadly, we've gone for the latter.
I feel like it doesn't know what it wants.
It doesn't really know.
It does mostly feel like the latter, but at the same time, you have some elements of the former mixed in there as well. And I feel like it can work as a mesh of both, really, because obviously you have the Third Doctor coming from the 70s world, Jo coming from our modern world now. There should be a happy point to meet in the middle, but it feels like a constant tug back and forth. And yeah, it doesn't quite work. The Conservators, I think, is the strongest point of this box set. But even in that, just feels like it would be the take it or leave it story in any other box set.
I will say I liked Iron Shore, but I think it's far more suited as a companion chronicle than it is a full cast adventure.
Yeah, I struggled a bit more with Iron Shore, to be honest. I wouldn't say it's in the bleak bottom tier as much as it would tickle me a bit to put it down there. Yeah. I think a lot of that's more down to, you know, comparing it to other Third Doctor adventures. You know, the heights it's fallen from, I suppose. I'd probably say another Far From Great.
Yeah.
I mean, sort of comparing it to the 11th Doctor Chronicles that we just talked about, how that is helped by the fact that it's very much planned as this limited run. this doesn't feel like that. So you're not really savoring the stories in the same way.
No, I mean, I like the idea of it's the third Doctor literally dying from radiation sickness, and he's visiting Joe. I like that idea,
During
but
Planet of the Spiders,
so
so
it's
farewell
sort of-
tour.
so it has that sort of limited feel, like you say, but it's just business as usual, really. And the thing is, we've had the third Doctor meet old Joe in Find and Replace. We've had it with the sacrifice of Joe Grant in, the Legacy of Time set. So it's not a new concept to get excited about.
They've been doing it for a few other companions as well, where it just feels like they're giving them a happily ever after, and I'm never going to wrap it up.
Yeah.
Which, I mean,
especially
Nick Richards said
now
himself on the podcast that he doesn't think stories have to have endings or like endpoints. And I mean, I could see that argument in some cases, but I don't think it has to happen all the time. And I think, especially with Big Finish, where you're constantly filling in gaps anyway, tying up this arc doesn't mean you can't then go back and slot in new stories with the Doctor and Older Joe, because that's literally what this is anyway. It's being slotted in. If you can slot into the TV stories, you can slot into your own stories as well.
Yeah.
Exilus, did you pick up the collection, or have you listened to all of the releases that are in the collection?
I've only listened to the first story, which is the Fifth Doctor one, which is Fifth Doctor in Irish World Time, and it's okay. It's all right. Anthony Head is pretty good in it, but I don't think it's fair to comment on it as a whole.
It's a not heard. I mean, yeah.
There's
a whole heard. 8th, another Iris one. Sorry, Katie, you're not being treated too well. You're either put low down, or you're not even been listened to. New Frontiers, Fourth Doctor Adventures, Series 12 is the most consistent series of the Fourth Doctor Adventures. I think it's fair to say.
Series 8, I'd say.
Yeah, I think certainly for a while we've been having box sets that are
50-50.
One story's really amazing, and then the other is just not necessarily worth your time. With this box set, though, you get 2 stories that are just pretty strong, and again, that's sort of the theme of the year. But I feel like these are nevertheless above that. I mean, both these stories are available individually as download only: Ice Heist and Antilia the Lost. So we've got them here as well as separate releases for this tier list, because I feel like it's only fair that if it's something you can buy, it's something that goes on the tier list.
Yeah.
So Ice Heist, where would you put it?
This is my personal favourite of the 2. I think it's got this wonderful Hinchcliffe-Williams tone. It's sort of a marriage of both. Tom is giving such a wonderful Hinchcliffe-style Doctor performance, which I don't think we get that often.
There's a lot of gritted teeth in there, isn't there?
Especially when he's sort of biting and snapping at the Ice Lord. Which is great.
I love how the Ice Warriors are treated in this story as well.
They're
not out for honour. They're out to put food on the table.
Yeah, they're mercenaries, aren't they, within this? It's one of my favourite Big Finish Ice Warrior stories, actually. And it was one I was like, when it was first revealed, I was like, I really want to hear this, and I'm glad it didn't disappoint.
I mean, it did at first. We were both messaging each other after part 1, being like, this isn't what I get in hype for. But it does improve a lot as it goes on, and by part 4, and then re-listening again, it's like, oh, okay, I see now. Which is funny, because often it's the opposite effect. You start off with a strong part 1, and then by the time you get to part 4, you're like, where did all that energy go?
But like World Traders, so it happens again. Part 1, brilliant. Rest of the story, take it or leave it. But I think this story gets the alienness of the Fourth Doctor. But we're going to like this art place, and we've got one of Margaret's sculptures, and the Doc's like, it's one of yours, Margaret. You're dead. Enjoy. It's
wonderful what it does with Margaret as well.
Yes.
I think this whole series, again, because it is this limited run, I mean, that helps so much with the character of Margaret, I feel. Genius for storytelling for Ice Heist.
Yes, I'd agree with that.
I'd probably say Antilia Lost is conflicted but interesting.
Yeah, I like it because it feels like an early adventure.
It's got that vibe. And a New Frontiers, I think Genius for storytelling.
Yeah,
We can't quite put it in the middle.
No.
So we'll bump it up to the top
like
spot. No. Yeah. I mean, and sometimes the whole is greater than the sum of its parts.
That is true.
Yeah. The 8th of March. I've not picked this one up. You did. I think you started listening to a bit of it.
Yes,
I go back.
I listened to, I think, about 5 minutes of it, and I was like, this is not great. This is not good, Tom. Just
didn't click.
Yeah, it's not that great, so I'm just gonna put it in not heard.
Yeah, I think not fair to fully comment. Same with Thirst Trap. Not heard that one. Torture's coming.
Yeah, nearly there for you.
Technically a 2023 release we have not picked up, but we have listened to. Have we been pirating Big Finish? No, we haven't. This came out previously as part of Masterful, the box set in 2021 celebrating 50 years of the Master. It was part of the special edition of that, like a little bonus that they threw on. And now it's available separately as a download. So, yeah, I think it's really good.
Really good. Really solid. It's a proto audio novel. I guess it's sort of proof of concept for the audio novel, and I think John Coleshaw does a brilliant job. It's a gritty style story. The action sequences work so brilliantly in prose. Yeah, it's a really
particularly
solid
car chase. Yeah,
and it feels wonderfully 70s with like the television center, and yeah, it feels a bit meta in a way.
Yeah, I'd probably say genius for storytelling.
Yes, I'll agree with that.
Yeah. And I mean, if you've not picked up any of the audio novels, then you're uncertain because they can be quite chunky, it's usually 7-8 hours long. This one's about 3.5 hours. So it's sort of a good, not quite bite-size way to test it out, but you can dip your toe in before you take the whole plunge with this one. So yeah, I recommend it if you're interested in the audio novels but are a bit apprehensive about that. None are Iris Wildtime and None Are Not Heard.
Sorry, Katie.
Conflicts of interest.
We love Davo, but this was a bit of a stinger as well.
Yeah, a theme of the year was
doctors we loved
disappointing us, and doctors that usually we're a bit more apprehensive about pleasantly surprising us, and we do have some of that to come. But yeah, we usually love Fifth Doctor, but this box set didn't quite do it.
I think the first story by John Dorney is the better of the bunch.
For me, I really don't know. I think some of them have good moments, but at the same time, overall, I don't feel like either of them quite come together.
I think it's a shame that the ending for the last story didn't really come into play with In the Night.
Yeah, or anywhere, really.
Yeah.
Like, it leaves on a strong note, but it feels like a bit of a cop-out because this story doesn't have to do anything with that. And then no story is ever likely to pick up on that, it seems, or if it is, it's somewhere down the pipeline. We're not sure where. So I'd probably say listen in hope.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I mean, conflicted but interesting would be fitting, but I don't think it's on the same level as those.
No, it's one I want to revisit, but I'm not exactly in a hurry to go for it at the minute. Final box set for Robots.
Yeah, that came to an end last year. I mean, over a year ago now. That is quite something, because I started listening to this, must have been, early on in the pandemic. The first box set came out December 2019, and I picked up the first two together and had a bit of a binge there, or Either that or I picked up the first one and not long after the second one came out, I think. But yeah, it's a range that I've loved. It's certainly lost its way a bit towards the end, though, sadly. I'd say this one is conflicted but interesting.
Luke. Another Torchwood?
Launch date, not got.
Oh, okay.
No. Beyond Bannerman Road. This is childhood nostalgia
Yeah.
poured into an audio drama, but it's more than just nostalgia. I think it's got the Sarah Jane Adventures vibes there, but at the same time, it's taking the fact that these characters are now in their late 20s, early 30s. They're at a different point in their life. And, I feel like that's sort of relatable for us as we tick further on through our 20s. There's something wonderful about getting to grow up with these characters again and getting to revisit them at this point in their life and seeing the different troubles, that presents them with. It is following on in that same spirit, but it's not trapped in the past. The nostalgia isn't chaining it down, it's elevating it. I think it's a pretty good box set. I think the series gets better in the second volume.
Okay.
But how much of the first one did you get? Did you finish it?
I only listened to the first story, and then other stuff got released, and I just had to pop it on the back burner. But I really enjoyed the first episode.
I think that's the strongest from the first set.
It had such a nice sort of. It felt like a nice sort of spiritual successor to the Sarah Jane Adventures. It still had the same heart, the Sarah Jane Adventures, but you could tell it was a little bit slightly more grown up, and it was beautiful to catch up with those characters again.
But it's not grown up in the Torchwood way. It's just matured in the way human beings mature over time. I think there's something wonderful and special about this series. I'd probably say it's conflicted but interesting, or as genius for storytelling. Ooh, word. Just because I know the second one's gonna
be better.
I think I'd go conflicted but interesting.
Okay. Iris. I'm just gonna pop it there. Just because I don't think you've listened to that one.
No, that's fair to say. I mean, those are like over 8 hours, aren't they?
Yeah, they're chunky boys.
Yeah. I mean, you get your money's worth because they're a lot cheaper than the audio novels.
But we start the big 60th anniversary celebrations at Big Finish with the Once and Future saga, Past Lives. Was it a promising start? No.
Again, we had our hopes high for this one.
We did.
We were let down. I've re-listened to it. It still didn't get any better.
I think it misses so many wonderful character beats within it. What the story could have had, and that's a real crime for it, really.
It feels very much like a checklist, and it feels like there's no real plot or drive to it. It's just
that's Once and Future.
Going through the motions. Yeah, that's the overall thing. There's some strong stuff within Once and Future, but Past Lives certainly isn't it. And I think the overall Once and Future saga doesn't quite come together.
It soured very quickly.
Yeah. And I think certainly there was not so much talk about it after the first couple of releases.
It fizzled out very quickly.
I'd probably go Far From Great.
Yeah.
It just feels like it's wasted potential, really. Sarah post
Hand of Fear,
yeah, meeting the Fourth Doctor again, but not the Fourth Doctor at the same time. It doesn't really do much with that whole, this is from the Time War, from the Doctor's perspective. It's very much just business as usual. Fourth Doctor, oh, hello, Sarah. Oh, hello, Kate. I knew your dad.
Yeah.
It just, yeah. I just wish it had more going for it. Pioneers, though. This is where things get good for the Ninth Doctor.
Yes. Again. After a bit of a rocky sort of raid in Series 2, this was a bit of a breath of fresh air, I would say.
it's a consistent box set as well. Again, consistency is the theme of this year for the most part. Because usually with these Ninth Doctor box sets, you got one pretty good story, one really good story, and then one stinker. No stinkers in this one.
It's pretty much all the same level.
Yeah, no really good stories either. But
I love
they're all just pretty good.
Northern Lights. I think that's probably my favorite of the set.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I'd say my favorite was. Northern Lights certainly got a lot going for it. The Green Gift is probably my least favorite. So
yeah,
between Northern Lights, a beautiful game. But yeah, I'd probably say this is conflicted but interesting.
Yeah, I'd say so. Torchwood, this one you have listened to. Go for it.
Yes, I have. Among Us 1. This is a wonderful series, very much delving into a lot of very now topics. And, there's lots of times listening to these where something will pop up that feels very much of the real world. You think this is a sci-fi send-up of something that should be, relatable, but at the same time, a little bit removed from the world we're living in. But no, it isn't. The world we're living in can be a scary place, and I think this series very much reminds you of that. Among Us 1, I'd say, is a genius for storytelling.
Okie doke. Pop that in there for you.
Oh no, genius. Wrong one. One down.
My bad.
Yeah. Okay, Torchwood will be going at the top, but not yet.
All right. Okay. There is one more. Is it? Okay.
Yeah. Among Us is an interesting one because I feel like it's one where none of the stories, particularly or like individual episodes, stand out too strongly. They're all very, very good, but they all sort of come together to form a whole that's even stronger. Again, the whole greater than the sum of its parts, I think, is how I would describe Torchwood Among Us. And there's certainly some strong moments, but yeah, it's just a good setup for what's to come later. Is Among Us 1.
Then we have The War Doctor Begins, Comrade in Arms, the 5th box set from The War Doctor Begins.
I think this is one of The War Doctor Begins' best box sets.
Okay.
I think certainly for the individual story approach, because some War Doctor Begins box sets are one long story over 3 hours, and others are 3 individual stories. This is sort of a bit of a mesh of the two because you do have a through line here, but at the same time, each story can be listened to on its own. It does stand alone well enough. I'd probably say this is a genius for storytelling. I love Case's journey within it.
Yeah, because she was introduced in Warbringer, wasn't she? Second box set.
Yeah, this is sort of following up on that rather wonderfully. Now we have Purity Unleashed. I think probably the strongest from the Purity saga, but that's unfortunately not saying too much. I mean, yeah. I don't. Did you finish listening to this one?
I only did the first story, the Broadway one, which I thought was quite a neat idea, and I really liked it. But yeah, I just didn't carry on with it.
I had fun with it. I think the second story is also pretty good, going through like history and. Again, it's sort of dealing with some quite heavy topics like eugenics and, again, some things that feel like they should be these mad ideas that only pop up in stories but actually are scarily close to real life. I'd probably say conflicted but interesting for this one.
Okay.
The final story as well. Pretty strong. It gave me Peterloo Massacre vibes in some places. I do like that final story by Ian Potter. Now,
on to the controversial one.
Yeah. Daleks Genesis of Terror. This sort of feels hard to put on the tier list because...
It's only part 1 of a story.
Yeah, it's something different. It's more of a special feature than a feature.
It should have been with the arc as a little bonus. much like the Lost Story box sets did with the Destroyers and,
Yeah.
you know, Fragile Yellow Arc Fragrance, whatever it's called. It should have been something like that as a little gun. Hey, if you want to have this, you can. Because there's nothing really different to it. Only a few minor moments, I would say.
Yeah, so there's some moments a bit more dragged out. It's a lot bleaker, and I'd say the finished product ends up being, funnily enough. This is the original part one of Genesis of the Daleks by Terry Nation. It includes his stage directions as well, and so that makes it a bit of a different experience. Yeah, I think it's something quite special in that.
Yeah.
It's certainly interesting to see like this early work, this early version brought to life somewhat. It's very much a way of experiencing that, early documentation differently and, more alive, I suppose. Yeah, I think it's fascinating from that point of view, from the more of a scholarly angle, I suppose.
Yeah, it's a curiosity piece, isn't it? It's a curio.
Yeah. And I don't think it's the cash grab people make it out to be. No, I think it was they were quite open with what they were going for here. They weren't trying to deceive anyone of thinking they've reinvented Genesis of the Daleks. But yeah, again, it's hard to rank with the others because it isn't the same kind of release. But I did enjoy it.
Yeah, I did enjoy it. Yeah, I think, but it's a bit
the storytelling or conflicted, a bit interesting.
I say conflicted, but interesting. I'd say.
Yeah, I think that does fit because it is interesting.
Yeah, it's a time capsule of what we could have had with Genesis of the Daleks, really.
Yeah. Okay, you're looking at it the same way you'd look at a reference book, for example.
Yeah,
it's just in audio form. Yeah. This isn't your usual Big Finish release, and I think it's okay to have that sometimes.
I think if you treat it like that, you'll have a good time with it.
Yeah. And if it's not your cup of tea, fair enough. There's plenty of other things out there.
Look at this tier list, so how much we've still got to go.
Yeah,
plenty there for people to enjoy, such as Solitary Confinement, which was a box set we were quite late to listening to. I think it was around October we got around to reviewing it.
Yeah, we sort of felt the War Master lost its way a bit.
I have to say, I really enjoyed this one.
I think, putting a bit of distance between us and the War Master for that time, and allowing us to get to it when we were into it, not when it just come out and we feel like, oh, we've got to listen to it now. I think that certainly helped this one for us experiencing it.
Derek Jacobi being an Alexa type device, and the story that's in just being so utterly depressing, because you think that's where we are as people are probably at that stage in life now. It's quite depressing.
It's like what Rani Takes on the World had going for it, but depressing instead.
Yes, yeah. I think maybe it doesn't come together in this sort of overall story.
The last story definitely lets this set down, and it becomes less than the sum of its parts in this case. Because I do quite enjoy those first three stories in their own right, but at the same time, you sort of notice a formula with the War Master stories that sort of feels a bit tired by this point, now that we've had pretty much 9 box sets of it.
Yeah, if you listen to it, you know the formula we're talking about.
Yeah, it started very strong, and there are some that break away from that mold. But yeah, nevertheless, these stories, again, I enjoy very much on their own, but when you look at it in that grander context, it does sort of take away from it a bit. I'd probably go Conflict a bit interesting again.
Yeah, I'd agree. The Ark.
This is a funny one.
Not a Security Kitchen, Monoids. This is your Ark in space, but a very different one, isn't it?
Yeah, there's not really that much in common with the actual televised arc in space beyond the fact that it's set on an arc that happens to be in space, and there's something intruding on it. But yeah, I mean, you've got a few character names cropping up again. You got a Noah here,
Yeah.
doing that pun. You got a Viva instead of a Vira. But yeah, I mean, it's got some good sequences. Like, there's one of Harry out in space. I mean, that's one of the funny things about this, because it was written at a time where the Fourth Doctor hadn't been cast yet. They were thinking of going for an older Doctor, which is why Harry as a character was introduced. So if they did go down that route, they'd have someone to handle the action sequences. And in this story, you get to experience that what if, really. Again, it's sort of a curiosity piece in that sense. Tom gives a bit of a different performance, really. It's a bit of a different Fourth Doctor, because again, it's sort of written as if it could have been an older gentleman in the role. I think I like that it allows Tom to do something different, but at the same time, sort of like, you know what? I'm glad we got the Tom that we got. I'm glad we got the arc in space that we got. And I think that has been some people's issues with the season 12 Lost Stories, is that, these were the versions that were rejected. So why should we, listen to these when we've got the better completed version? But sometimes that's not the case. I think I prefer Return.
Absolutely. That's the best of the bunch.
Yeah. But with the arc, I think the arc in space knocks this one right out of the park.
Easy.
Yeah, probably a listening hope.
Yeah.
And now we come to Once and Future again, the Fifth Doctor installment this time, with a special appearance by Colin Baker as the curator. This one is doing look, it's the Doctor's daughter alongside the Doctor's father.
We've done it again.
The Doctor's daughter's father, sorry.
We did it in Legacy of Time. This one feels very insert Doctor here. It could be any Doctor, I feel, with this one. Granted, we go back to Orion, and that's, linked to the Fifth Doctor, but I feel like this could be any Doctor. It's sort of your placeholder Doctor story, I would say.
I feel like it's reasonably well written for the Fifth, but yeah, I think I love what it has to say about art and its value, and what gives it value. But on the whole, I think it's probably a conflict a bit interesting.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Series 12, the final part, Angels and Demons.
This is an interesting one if you want to pick it up, because if you want the full series, you have to get the box set so that you get Ghost of Margaret, which is like this bonus two-parter that isn't available separately. But you can get two two-parters together, the Wizard of Time and the Friendly Invasion, which is why there's sort of an awkward split of the covers there on this tier list. And then Stone Cold you can get on its own. But yeah, Angels and Demons is a really strong box set, I think. It just took the momentum that New Frontiers had going for it and builds on it.
Especially when you get to the bonus story, Ghost of Margaret, which is such a powerful and moving hour-long story by Tim Foley. Such a wonderful concept and idea behind it. It's beautifully tragic. And I think it really sort of cements Series 12 of the Fourth Doctor Adventures, I would say, as one of the best.
I don't know whether it's quality unbound or a genius for storytelling. It's definitely one of the two.
I'm looking at the list. I'm thinking, are we going to have any more high points?
Should we go for it?
I think we should.
Quality unbound.
I think we should.
I don't think it's quite on the same level as the two that we have up there.
But again, it's the summer of
high enough above. Yeah. And I think, there is a step up from from New Frontiers as well. Not that there was anything wrong with New Frontiers, as you could tell, it's in the second to top tier. But yeah, I just think to show that there was a progression there. However, Wizard of Time and Friendly Invasion, I don't know whether I go Conflict a bit interesting or Genius for storytelling.
See, I like Wizard of Time, Friendly Invasion, not so much.
I'm almost more the opposite.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. Should we go Conflict a bit interesting?
Yeah. And then for me, the highlight for me is Stone Cold, which is your quintessential Fourth Doctor Hinchcliffe Weeping Angel story, but not what you expect. It's Robots of Death meets the Stephen Moffat Angel two-parter, Flesh and Stone and Time of Angels.
Yeah, it's not quite going the gothic horror route you might think that a story like this would, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that, because the direction it does go in is pretty brilliant. Yeah, I'd probably get maybe a Genius for storytelling.
Yeah, I'd agree. I'd say it's up there.
Because again, we've got Ghost of Margaret, which boosts this whole box set up. So that's why, even though like the two separate releases from it are lower down than the overall box set, the overall box set does have that bonus story to get up to its height. And I think all the stories in this series are pretty strong. You wouldn't go wrong with any of them. Now we come to Far From Home. We've mentioned Doctors that are usually surefire hits for us, disappointing us, and that on the opposite end of that spectrum, there were Doctors who we usually don't have much hope for really coming through. This is an example of the latter. I really, really liked Far From Home. After it being a while since I clicked with a Seventh Doctor audio. Certainly had some good ones like Scream of the Daleks, but overall I hadn't been this one over for quite a while, particularly with what this does with Harry and Naomi in both these stories. This was when I was really like, I see why these characters have been put together. I love their dynamic as a trio. The way that, particularly the first story, Operation Dusk, set during World War II with Vashta Nerada, how they're almost more like his operatives, really. It's sort of taking...
They have their own agency within it, don't they? You have Harry examining like the bodies and the medical side.
Yeah, they sort of have a bit more of a purpose. They feel a bit more like Chris and Roz, in a way, how they interplay with the Seventh Doctor. This is very much feels like it's capturing that sort of vibe. And then Naomi's arc is a rather beautiful story, I feel. I'd probably say Quality Unbound, or maybe Genius Story.
I'd be leaning towards Genius Storytelling.
Yeah, I think we'll put it there.
Because I feel
like just my excitement for good Seventh Doctor.
Amazing.
I've missed this.
Yeah.
It sort of made me feel like I love it a bit more than it not deserves, but
I think both brilliant stories. You can't go wrong with this box set, to be honest.
Now we come to Torchwood Among Us 2. This is where things start to come together a bit more. You're getting other characters coming back, like Yvonne. And I think I quite like her story, episode 6 in particular. It's a pretty strong run, written by Tim Foley. It all comes together very nicely. I love how each episode still feels very separate, feels like it has its own identity, but there's little things you pick up on that tie them together that you're like, I see where that's going. Both in terms of the narrative and thematically. And the final episode in this, how that left things, I was certainly eager to pick up on that cliffhanger in Among Us 3. So I feel like this is Quality Unbound.
Okay.
Almost
there we are.
More for Among Us as a whole as well, I think, to have something in that top spot. I did. This was when I was really, really enjoying the series. I was very much into it at first, but this took that to a whole other level. So, Torchwood Among Us, we'll come back to you. But first, we have Prisoners of London, which I listened to part one of. I enjoyed it. I never quite got round to the rest of it. You didn't even pick this one up, did you? Or
No,
did
I
you in the
didn't.
end?
I didn't. I've not got this one.
Yeah, so yeah, not heard, unfortunately. Not
There we
fair to
are.
you.
And
Rank it.
another not heard, Mutant Nemesis.
I mean, you got the bundle, didn't you?
Yeah,
Sort
I've
of-
got them, but
Do you
not
regret
listened to
buying the
it.
bundle?
No, because I know I'll get around to it eventually.
Yeah.
It's just a question of when.
I mean, I got the first two in this series and then didn't get the other two in the end. I mean, who knows? Maybe one day, but I don't feel like I'm missing out on too much. Now, a genius for not storytelling, but war. We're back to Seventh Doctor again. We've got Davros, played by Terry Malloy. We've got the Time War. And I think the Time War is very much where this feels rather standard.
This feels like a side quest from the overall arc of Once and Future. I think as its own little story, great. Seventh Doctor and Time War, very neat idea of this sort of master chess player Doctor in the big cosmic battleground, really.
I think this is where the cracks really started to show overall.
Yeah.
And we were sort of a bit more concerned because, like you say, it feels like a side quest. But very much all the stories do. It doesn't feel like as much of a planned through line with this, more just throw the idea at a writer, see what they come up with, and then stitch something together at the end.
Well, I think with the others you need to find your daughter. What is this diamond? You'd have a little inkling of where we should be going. This doesn't have it.
This is literally, sorry, Doctor, we know you're in the middle of this.
Yeah.
But we need you to do this because the Time War's still going on. But at the same time, I think that would have been fine for one part of it. But yeah, the way the arc overall worked was weird because it didn't feel like the audience was let in on any of it. Like the whole diamond thing, all that stuff. We were very much kept in the dark with it. So it just felt like stuff coming out of nowhere. There wasn't anything for us to latch onto and theorize about. Yeah. And I feel like I'm taking my frustrations with Once and Future out on a story which we've also said has very little to do with Once and Future overall.
Yeah.
You go and listen, Hope. I think I had a good time with it though.
I had a good time.
I think it's another conflict to be interesting.
Yeah, I think it's up there because I don't think it's the worst and it's not the best of the series.
Yeah. Sorry, Genius for War. I feel like you took the brunt of something that perhaps you didn't deserve.
Yeah, it's got some cool moments.
Yeah. I do like how it does bring in the Doctor's degeneration, though. How that comes into play in the resolution. James Robert McCrimmon. This feels like another return of Jo Jones.
Yes.
Doctor meeting older companion again in 3 two-part stories. One of which is pretty good. The middle one, again.
Green Man, is inspired by like an Alfred Hitchcock film. With a returning classic monster, which you probably can guess what it is.
I don't know. I didn't guess. At least before listening.
Well, yeah, I'll keep it a surprise then.
But yeah, certainly, it was one of those ones where I'm like, are they actually doing it? You're listening for out thinking, it's got to be that. It's got to be that. But, even though you still get that excitement when it is finally revealed. But again, similar to Return of Jo Jones, the first story ain't great at all.
I like the first story, actually. I quite like it.
Sorry.
I quite like it.
I mean, you just like your Edinburgh.
I do. I love Edinburgh. And this was before I went to Edinburgh, actually. So,
And then the final story, just okay for me.
Yeah, I think the last story is probably the weakest one.
Would you say it's better than Return of Jo Jones?
I'd say it's conflicted.
Ooh, I'd probably go far from great, to be honest. So I feel
really,
like Listening Hope.
Yeah, go for that.
Yeah. Now we come to Among Us 3. I feel like the finale lets this one down a little bit in the sense that it doesn't quite feel like a finale. It's a very interesting episode in how it's told, but at the same time, it feels like it leaves a lot unresolved. So I'm curious to see where Among Us goes from here, or Torchwood Series 8 goes from here. I don't know whether it'll be another something Among Us, or if they'll drop that title scheme they've got going on there. But yeah, How I Took Over the World, I think is what the first story's called. How I Conquered the World might be. But that's a very good one. I love that one. Again, that's a very unconventional story. But yeah, I think this one is conflict a bit interesting.
Okay.
And that's the journey that I went on.
We're definitely sticking to sort of the middle tier, aren't we, really?
Traveling Hope.
Best Night Doctor of the Year.
Yeah, another pleasant surprise.
Really great set of 3 stories. My favourite being Run, which is Alpha Centauri's origin of how they became a political figure on the political stage. It feels wonderfully 2005 with sort of an Aliens of London, not end of the world feel to it.
Yeah.
It just feels sort of quintessential 2005 Doctor Who. And then we've got the Butler Did It, the middle story, which feels like your filler.
It's the weakest. Probably the weakest of series 3 as a whole so far, I feel.
Oh,
At least, well, I say as a whole, but I've not listened to Buried Threats yet.
Oh, I disagree with that.
But yeah, and then Below There. I mean, we've done this in reverse order.
But Below There's great. I think that's your favorite.
I love Below There. Yeah, that's a really strong one. Really creepy at times. But yeah, it's got a pretty strong criticism of capitalism in there. So yeah, I rate the message that this story has weaved throughout it, and how it incorporates that, what the main character is going through. I say main character because it's kind of not the Doctor in this one.
It's Companion of the Week, isn't it?
But it's Companion of the Week done right.
Yeah, and I think the story lives and dies on that character. And I think the actor playing the character does a brilliant job bringing that story to life, because it's all on her or nothing, really.
Yeah, it's a pretty small cast, pretty isolated location, and yeah, it was wonderful. I'd probably say genius for storytelling, this box set.
Yeah, I'd agree. It's the first story, wonderfully claustrophobic as well.
Sigil, I did pick up, but I've not listened to.
Okay.
Yeah. I do want to get around to that, though, because I did enjoy Myra Melvin's episode in Torchwood Among Us 2 a great deal, which also had Gareth David Lloyd in there as Yanto Jones. But sort of like not Yanto Jones at the same time, because he's dead at that point. How does that work? I won't give anything away here. Two's Company.
The Dartboards.
Again. This one got a lot of hate because it did very much seem like, a random collection of characters. I had fun.
I had a lot of fun.
That's all I can ask.
It's so surprising how much I enjoyed this one. We've reviewed pretty much all the Wanted Future stories. So if you want to know why we like it more, check out that video.
Yeah. I'll probably go genius for storytelling. I don't know, conflict's a bit interesting.
I feel like it's above these two.
Yeah.
So I feel inclined to put it up here. Just on that principle.
Yeah. Just vibes carry a lot. So yeah, we'll let it stay there. Diary of River Song, the final series of this range, the Orphan Quartet, has one very, very strong story in it.
Tim Foley.
One very, very weak story in it at the end.
Oh, the ending's horrible.
That one
such a slog.
Really dragged.
Such a slog.
One alright story at the start, and for some reason I forgot about the Croton story. I was trying to remember.
Mm.
Right, so you've got the Excise Men at the start. You've got Dead Man talking about Tim Foley in the middle. You've got the wife of River Song at the end, which was not fun.
Yeah.
But yeah. Harvest of the Crotons. That was also a lot of fun. Jackie Tyler and
In like
River
a
Song.
hot tub with
Yeah.
it's got like a classic Jackie line within it.
Yeah. I think that one was rather wonderful as well. And, you know, the thematic links of these stories is quite nice. How it is about, you know, River having lost her mother and father. And, you know, the characters that she meets along the way, how that plays into it. You know, Jackie, despite that seeming like perhaps a bit of a dartboard throw from afar, I think makes sense. There is a narrative reason why these two characters are coming together, as you know, you've got Jackie, whose daughter travels with the Doctor, and River, whose mother travels with the Doctor, and how they're both coming at these things from very different perspectives. Yeah, it's very much about those people who are in orbit of the Doctor, but not, you know, full-time traveling with him. It's about being left behind. Yeah. I'd go Conflict a bit interesting, because I think those middle two stories do add a lot of value. I think that first story doesn't do any harm, and that final story really stings after how good the rest of the box set was, and how good a year this was for River.
Yeah, especially coming off the high of Friend of a Family.
I think the Diary of River Song deserved a better ending.
Yes, it did. Absolutely, I agree.
Purity Unbound now. This one I had hopes for, because I did quite enjoy what Unleashed had to offer. I was quite into the concepts of these stories, particularly the middle one I was quite excited for. That seemed very Sapphire and Steel, with the Sixth Doctor trapped in this sort of service station out of time, while Hebe and Mel are off in Pease Pottage. But again, a weird warped version of Pease Pottage. But yeah, it just didn't come together for me. None of these stories did. The first story I was a bit meh on. I thought, it's okay. I've got this next one I'm looking forward to. Then that disappointed. Then the finale really was a bit of a clunker. Something weird happens about halfway through that upends the whole narrative up until this point. I mean, I can sort of see thematically what it was going for, but at the same time, it feels like it came out of nowhere. I'd say this is far from great.
Okay, we're going there.
Yeah, I don't think, not quite the bottom tier. But yeah, I was disappointed.
In the Night.
I sound like a teacher talking about their pupil.
I mean, In the Night definitely isn't that. I think Pursuit of the Nightjar is the standout by Tim Foley.
It's beautiful.
It's very much sort of the Doctor exploring his own heroes and the people that inspired him and the people who made him be the character he is, you know, the person he is.
One of the first stories he ever heard leaving Gallifrey was the story of the Nightjar. And so this is him meeting his heroes and things going a bit wrong, as they do in Doctor Who.
And the story being not quite as it was written down. And it's such a small, intimate story. I think, you know,
lots of jeopardy in there.
Lots of jeopardy. Such a small supporting cast. You've got two other supporting characters in your TARDIS crew.
Yeah, you very much wonder how are they going to get out of this. Like, you know, things keep going wrong. Things keep getting more desperate. Yeah, I really like Pursuit of the Nightjar. And then you've also got Resistor in this, which I think is a pretty solid two-parter.
I think it's fine. It's fine.
Yeah, I'd probably say genius for storytelling.
I'd agree with that. I'd agree.
Yeah, there we go. So return to form for the
David.
Fifth Doctor after a bit of a wobble with conflicts of interest.
Hmm.
Now we come to the best of Once and Future.
Oh yeah, this is my favorite.
But at the same time, it stings a little bit because this got our hopes up.
Mm-mm.
And
It fell
this
very
one
quickly.
this one does sort of rely on what comes after as well.
Yeah, it does.
Because, you've got some reveals in here.
But it sets
It
up
finally
more.
feels like, some movements being made in the overall art. But then it feels like that doesn't go anywhere in the next two stories. So I don't know if that slightly knocks it down a peg or two.
Still, I'm just going to enjoy it as its own thing.
Yeah, but I don't see. I'd say that's possible with some of the other ones, like a Genius for War.
Yeah.
But with this one, a lot of that does rely on what's to come after. Yeah, because it's not quite got a beginning, middle, and end. It's got a beginning and a middle, and it feels like you're going to get the end later on. Yeah. I'd say a genius for storytelling.
Yeah. I mean, I like the pairing of Tennant and Michelle Gomez. That's really quite cool and exciting.
It's like the flip of what we had with 12 and Sim.
Yeah, it's a RTD Doctor in a very Moffat style story.
Yeah, that's definitely the case. You got obviously Paternos the gang in there as well, who are Moffat creations, and they got a tribute to War of the Worlds going on too, which is a nice little look back at one of the inspirations of Doctor Who. Really, it's sort of like the foundation of modern sci-fi, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, Frankenstein was where sci-fi was born, but this is where it was almost more reinvented in a way. It's more recognizable sci-fi. Dog Hop. Not got this one.
Okay.
I hop, skipped, and jumped it.
Same with Rose Tyler for me.
Yeah.
You picked up Doomsday, yeah?
No. Did you?
No. I mean, I nearly did for Eighth Doctor and Charlie, but we got that later on, so I felt like I got my A and Charlie fix elsewhere.
Satisfied elsewhere. Gallifrey War Room Maneuvers, I skipped. I took my chance to hop off of Gallifrey at the end of Time War 4. And I can't say I've looked back.
Yeah.
September was a cheap month for us.
No, it was, wasn't it? It was only a couple of releases.
And all those we got in advance anyway. So.
Yeah, it's true. And then we have the collected Eighth Doctor Lucy Miller Adventures Series 1, which is a pretty solid series. Again, proof of concept, Blood of the Daleks, a great introduction to Big Finish. And it's one I absolutely adore. Horror of Glamrock with Bernard Cribbins set in a service station.
I really like that one.
It's a good one. I really like that one with that sort of... It's got a nice original score to it. Original songs by, I think, Barnaby Edwards. It's great. More Beloved's probably the weakest. And then Phobos, it's okay. And then you have No More Lies. And then you have Human Resources, which is a great Cyberman two-parter.
I love the pun of the title.
But
yeah, I do feel like after Blood of the Daleks, Human Resources feels like a bit of a disappointment.
Yeah.
They did so well with the top dog.
Yeah.
And then you got the second to top dog and the Cybermen that aren't treated anywhere near as well. Conflict's a bit interesting overall.
Yeah.
I mean, again, similar to Exodus, this is one that... Oh, not Exodus, sorry. Terror of the Master, technically. It's one that we've not bought this actual product, but we have heard what's within it.
Yeah.
Because, these were available separately beforehand. But now you get the option to have them all in one neat package for a little bit cheaper.
And new cover art as well.
Yeah, wonderful stuff there. Time Lord Immemorial. This is where Once and Future really crashed and burned for us.
God, this is the worst. It's an absolute stinker. Poor David Warner. Like this is Christopher Eccleston's first multi-Doctor story. You think it's going to be an absolute belter. It really isn't.
No. It feels like all the elements should be there.
Mm-hmm.
But then it's, again, similar to Past Lives. It just feels like it's going through emotions. It feels like the plot is being read out to you as it goes along almost.
Yeah.
Like there's very little setup of things earlier on. It just feels like everything suddenly thrown at you and then done as it goes on. That's it.
It's got to go there. It's got to go there. It's got to go there.
I don't know if it's the worst story of the year, but I feel like those ones that are worse are in box sets where they've got something while keeping them afloat. This just as its own release, no, not worth it.
Yeah.
Intelligence for War, more Third Doctor now. This is where we were like, okay, phew. Return of Jo Jones was just a dud. Third Doctor is still king.
Yeah. And I think this isn't the same quality as the other Season 7 Big Finish stories like Annihilators and the Unzal Incursion, but it's still very solid, putting Liz front and center and learning a bit about her past.
Yeah, a bit more of a espionage thriller angle here. Yeah, and I just love that with the Third Doctor Adventures, we're getting these big stories that don't require returning monsters to like boost up sales at this point. You know, it's very much being carried by Tim and these other recasts in their own right. Yeah, and just how faithful a recreation of the era this is, because a lot of that era was all, you know, unique monsters.
Yeah, it was.
Or, you know, I think the only monsters that returned from previous eras were Ice Warriors and Daleks. You've got a couple of recurring threats within there, like the Autons, but they were born with the Third Doctor.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's nice that they're continuing to pay tribute to that, I suppose. Yeah. And I mean, certainly, I wouldn't mind if a returning monster popped up in the near future in the Third Doctor Adventures, because it has been a while.
Yeah, it's been.
But I don't feel like it needs it. I don't feel like
no, it's not clamoring for it.
Yeah, I'm just happy to let the Third Doctor Adventures continue doing their own thing, and I will vibe with it for the most part.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably Juniors for storytelling.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. Paternoster Gang.
Picked it up, not got round to listen to it.
There we go.
Odyssey or Odyssey.
You've got these ones, haven't you?
The Ood trilogy. Yes, I have. Well, I've listened to the first two, not the third.
Okay.
But yeah, this is quite a strong story, actually. There's certainly a very funny way of not quite including a very naughty word.
Okay.
But yeah, I think that's very funny how that works into it. If you've listened to it, you know what I'm talking about.
When you get Mampety in, I think the second one, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, that's not a naughty word. That's just a bit of fun.
Yeah, I guess I just, on the same line.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there's a way I can explain it without quite spoiling it. But,
yeah.
And I'm not saying the word because YouTube doesn't like it.
Yeah,
but we will get demonetized. Yeah, the story as a whole, I quite enjoyed it. I love Ida Scott's dad being the voice of the Ood. You know how that all plays into it. I think he's a very interesting character, and it's very wonderful having these two characters come together who don't quite get along, but at the same time aren't enemies. You know, it very much is a complicated relationship between father and daughter, and I think that's perfect for Torchwood to explore. It is about the shades of grey, and Yeah, the music feels very on point to Impossible Planet. Satan Pit. It's very much got that
The
vibe
sort of
going for it.
strings.
Yeah,
Hmm.
and with I think the concept as well of this planet, how it came into being, how that all plays out across the story is rather ingenious as well. I'd probably say a genius for storytelling is Odyssey.
Okay.
Uh, Now we have the Union, where once the future finally ended, it all came
What a
together.
relief!
Yeah,
What a relief! What a relief! Um,
it's
it
no-
answers stuff.
hmm. I think it all ties it up rather neatly. I just
Yeah.
wish the journey was worthwhile. And again, I feel like it's sort of plot over entertainment.
Yeah.
Like I say, it's tying things all up, and you're sort of listening to going, "Oh, that makes sense. Oh, I see." And there's moments where I'm like, "Oh, that really resonates. I can see why they did that."
Hmm.
I just wish it was better.
And because it's the anniversary, you've got to do the obligatory Tribe of Gum
Mm,
thing within it. Susan in it, that's nice to have some involvement in the 60th.
yeah,
Yeah.
I
But I
think
feel like
it's
Tom's
once
the
in the
main
future,
doctor.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, you've got Susan as the Doctor's once, and then Riversong as his future. Well, that's nicely represented through them.
Hmm.
Yeah, it just doesn't work for me.
And then the big bad, you're like, oh, okay, it's quite niche.
Mm. Yeah.
I'd go Listening Hope.
Yeah. That'll far from great. I think no, listen, hope. We've been harsh enough to Once and Future.
Yeah.
We'll let it have this one. I
Um,
say it's not exactly a high tier, but
no.
Mm.
Again, check out a
Audacity.
review for it.
Audacity. What a box set.
Brilliant box set. I adore this one. This is one of the high points of the year.
Mm. I think for me, the first story is The Devouring. A bit take it or leave it.
I
I
love
think you
it.
like it more than me.
Yeah, I love the whole Regency England feel to it. McGann suits it perfectly,
Mm.
and the whole idea of wishing upon a star and being careful what you wish for. It's quite a neat idea. I love it.
Yeah.
And there's
For me,
the sound
this is
design for it's brilliant as well on the actual
Yeah.
devouring spaceship.
For me, this is made up for by the two-parter that follows, The Great Cyber War. Sometimes you can have these very with continuity heavy stories that feel bogged down by that. It feels like they're just doing these things to tie into it for the sake of it, and that the story only exists to explain some weird little discrepancy in Classic Who. With this, however, in what it does with the Revenge Cybermen, I think it's genius because it feels like it's just the layer on top. It's the icing on the cake. And it all comes together so entertainingly. The Cybermen are hardly in part one, but their presence is felt throughout. You've got that wonderful little musical sting that is now like part of their identity on Big Finish. Played a couple of times. There's a looming threat to them, and the build up to their appearance, and then the impact they make when they do appear. It's brilliant. It very much feels like a new series two-parter in that sense, in how that is all executed. It's Tim Foley. Were we shocked? No, we weren't.
No, it's got some wonderful little nods and why the Vogans have got a Gallifreyan symbol, and Cybermen and Gold, that sort of origin. Yeah, it's one for the
But it feels so
fan.
naturally woven in. It doesn't feel like it's just a box sticking exercise.
Yeah.
Would you go Quality Unbound?
I would go Quality Unbound personally.
I won't stop you, even though I'm not the biggest fan of The Devouring. I think, the Great Cyber War really does elevate it. I love that two-parter. Now we come to Who'd Done It, the little murder mystery story of this trilogy. Again, with the Mabty reference. I think it's mostly okay. I'd probably say Conflict's a bit interesting.
There we go.
Oh, and War Master now. Did you ever get around to finishing this set?
No, I think I only did the first story, which was a bit of a disappointing story by Tim Foley because it's sort of done in real time, wasn't it, or something like that?
Yeah, that was it. And it ends up being done better as a concept in Comrades in Arms, funnily enough. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the case, if I'm remembering rightly. Yeah, that was a disappointment. And, it was nice to have a true anthology for the War Master rather than an awkward, almost anthology with an overarching narrative that overall makes things less than the sum of its parts. This is completely standalone each story. You've even got one with Professor Yana at the end. It sort of is still following that format we previously mentioned, but there is one story that steps away from it, kind of, by having Billis Manager in there. But he just sort of takes the role of the War Master in that format instead, in a way. So, yeah, it feels like, one step forward, 2 steps back. I did really like the X-Files influence story, though, in this set. I'd probably say it's Conflict's a bit interesting.
You doke.
Did you pick up 10th Doctor Chronicles?
No, I didn't.
I did not either.
I draw the line with those chronicles.
Oh. This is all you.
Box of Terror. The True 60th Anniversary Special by Big Finish. Again, an audio novel. And this is a love letter to the Target books with the 70s Doctors. It's a multi-Doctor story, but also a multi-Sarah Jane story, where it shows the growth of Sarah as a character and why she is such an important character and why she is probably the definitive Who girl. There are so many wonderful treats within it, as you would expect with an anniversary story. The main bad you may think is Omega. It's not. Again, it's wonderfully conjured with the prose, the world building within it. It has this wonderful flux-like devastation to it. It's a really great audio novel. I've done a review on it, so check that out if you want to see full thoughts on it. But I'll say it's a genius for storytelling.
Oh, there we go. I do have it. I do want to listen to it at some point. It's just there's also a lot of other things to listen to.
I mean, this is nearly 9 hours. I think.
Yeah, that's it.
It does drag out a little bit too much.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like the commitment to something that big. Whereas when I've got these 1 hour stories that I could get through a bit quicker, it's like, I might as well go for that for now.
Yeah.
Broken Hearts. Have you listened to this one?
Yes, I have.
Because you were a bit eager to get to your Cybermen, so you skipped it and went straight into Everywhere and Anywhere. You thought, it's a bonus. I can leave it out. But
the series was never designed for it, but I'm so glad it exists. Because it's more time with these characters, which I really adore.
It's a wonderful exploration of the fallout from
Curiosity Shop.
Oh, yeah, Curiosity Shop in all of time and space that we mentioned. And yeah, I think it is wonderful that this story exists. The exploration of these characters. Does Valerie really know the Doctor? Is the Doctor really a good guy? It's Am I a Good Man done far better. It's everything that is great about the 11th Doctor Chronicles in full presence, really.
Yeah.
Because it's the characters and the journey they're going on. And, dealing with that baggage so that they're good to go for even more trauma in the next box set.
Yeah.
I think it is a genius with storytelling.
Yeah, it's hard not to agree with that.
Now we have In the Bleak Midwinter,
Mm.
uh, which,
Seasonal box set.
yeah, all three Christmas stories. There is a reason for that as well.
Mm.
I think the first story is quite nice.
Yeah.
Uh,
It's
but
not
that's
the
about it,
weakest.
really. It's very light and Christmassy in the sense that it doesn't really do much wrong,
Yeah.
but at the same time doesn't do a great deal right either, I suppose. It's sort of there.
Hmm.
I enjoy it, but I don't get much out of it. The Empty Man, the
Yes.
middle story, is, yeah, by far the best. That's your creepy M.R. James inspired
Mhm.
Christmas tale. I, yeah, really enjoy that one. And then it all comes together in Edinburgh
Yeah.
again for a story which I can't remember the name of. So I'm putting the pressure on you there. Can you
Oh
remember the
God,
title?
can I remember? No, I can't.
It's by Roy
Actually.
Gill. But yeah, it's not as great as I was hoping it would be.
I think there's a moment where the story takes a dip and it doesn't quite recover. I love that it uses the time of year to its advantage, and Edinburgh as a city fits the thematics of the actual story, with it becoming this industrial powerhouse for learning. And yeah, it's great. I like that aspect to it.
Yeah, agreed. And to be fair, I think it's going pretty strong. Winter of the Demon is what it's
There
called.
we are, Winter of the Demon.
Yeah, until a certain lion pops up in the middle of
that's
the
a bit where
story.
it dips.
That's when, yeah, it takes a turn. It sort of does a Stones of Blood, I suppose,
Mm.
and it doesn't quite recover from that. I'd say probably Conflict's a bit interesting overall.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yeah, it doesn't quite reach the heights of Audacity, but it's not a huge fall off either. Yep, Oracle, as I said, I've got it, just not listened. Enemy Mine, I have listened to, and I think it's rather beautiful how this comes to an end. Not just this box set, not just this little arc with Case, but the entirety of the War Doctor begins, how we come full circle by bringing in the Eighth Doctor in a very ingenious way. And yeah, it's rather heartbreaking and bittersweet how it all wraps up for Case and the War Doctor. The other two stories in the set are pretty good as well. But yeah, it's the finale where everything really comes together, and I'm like, oh, I like this. I'd go a genius for storytelling again.
There we are.
Everywhere and Anywhere now. The first story is the God Complex, but not quite as good and Christmassy.
Yeah, it's sort of Christmas Carol meets God Complex, isn't it? Good story for Valerie.
Yeah, I think what it does with the arc is quite nice, how things come together there. But yeah, at the same time, I feel like it's one of the weaker ones from the
I think it's the
Lovecraft
weakest of the
Chronicles.
set.
Oh, yeah, definitely. Not World's Fair, All's Fair.
All's fair. This is one what really sucker punches you.
Yeah, it's got a lot going on.
It's
It
when
unfortunately has a growly monster syndrome,
yeah.
but that aside, it's very good.
It's where you realise this isn't going to have a happy ending, this series. But then we finish on one of the best Cybermen stories out there, I would say, with what message it
Definitely
has
the best
behind.
11th Doctor.
Oh,
Yeah.
easy. And how it introduces us to the Nightmare and Silver Cybermen and the origins for those is great. What it says about sort of conversion therapy.
Yeah, it's
brilliant. so wonderfully
Instead
dark.
of taking it as an analogy, uh, it's doing it literally. And when I realized, oh, we're actually going there, it was, rather wonderful to have the balls to do that, I suppose.
Yeah.
And it does it very well. It's by Alfie Shaw. Uh, he's clearly got a lot to say on the topic, and I think it's all expressed wonderfully in here. Yeah. Genius for storytelling, this box set.
Yeah, I'd say so. Because I think even if the first story's a little bit weaker, it's still solid overall.
Yeah. And now we have Beyond Bannerman Road, the
Revenge of Wormwood.
Revenge of Wormwood. This one is, it has a bit more of an arc throughout it. Each story does tie into each other, but also is all pretty standalone. The ending of the second story feels very true to the Sarah Jane Adventures, how that all comes together. If you've listened, you know what I'm talking about in the way that resolution plays out. Yeah, I feel like the final story again feels true to the Sarah Jane Adventures, but in some ways in the weaker aspects. And how it feels like we've built up a lot, but it comes to an end pretty quickly. It sort of reminds me of the Series 4 finale in a way. There's a certain twist within it that I really rate, how that comes back around. And, what it does with Rani and Clyde as well. What Rani and Luke get to do in the first story. The first story is the highlight of the set for me, actually, which was surprising because it was the one I was sort of like, let's get past this and then the rest will be the good stuff. But no, it's actually got a lot going for it with this mystery in a little seaside town where apparently there are some time travelers around. And Rani's sort of skeptical about this until she sees that Luke and Unit are involved and warning her off. Unit gets a good part to play in this box set, particularly this first story. It sort of is about how sometimes friends grow apart a little bit in that, Luke's obviously gone into Unit. Rani has become a journalist, and so they're a bit more at odds here. But at the same time, Luke still has a lot of respect for Rani. I think, the first story just really amazed me, and I think I very much felt like Rani felt during this, where she was investigating this just because she had very little else to do, and so was skeptical, but then saw potential in this story and kept pursuing it. And I was skeptical going into this. I was sort of a bit meh on it for the first 5-10 minutes, and then it clicked with me, and I really rated it. Overall, probably another genius for storytelling.
Okay, like.
That second to top tier has come out quite full.
Yeah, it does actually. Yeah. Like we said, there's not many standout breakaway releases. It's pretty much the same level, really.
The Last Day Part 1.
This is a hard one to judge because it's, half of a 12-part story.
Yeah, it's the first 6 episodes. But at the same time, it is being sold as its own product. So it's got to go somewhere. Probably listen in hope. Yeah, because
I think it's set up. It's interesting with what it's doing with the characters, because it's not quite the characters you sort of know, I would say, with what it's going for. If you want to listen to it, make sure you are caught up with Dark Universe and Quantum Possibility Engine. I would say those are sort of the main ones I would say that it links to.
Yeah. And I suppose the whole Gods and Monsters arc as well sort of plays into it. And
so it's one you need to do your homework, even though they said you don't need to listen to it to understand it. I think for the best experience of it, you probably are going to need that.
Yeah, and we say best experience. We obviously didn't enjoy it that much.
Yeah, like there are characters within it where you're like, I recognize the voice, but I don't know what you're from, and then you're like, oh yeah, it's from that story.
I mean, I didn't even realize that. I just thought, oh, it's the whole point that we're meant to be in, with the characters going, what?
Yeah,
When
yeah,
he
yeah,
reveals
yeah, yeah.
uh, I think there's some interesting ideas in here, like Ace putting together almost Suicide Squad team to
Mm,
go up against the villain.
yeah.
Uh, but yeah, again, it's hard to judge, but it's safe to say I'm not hopeful for part two at this point.
I feel like I'm gonna need to listen to part one again before part two because I feel like I forgot most of the stuff that's happened.
Yeah, but at the same time, I don't feel a push to read into part
No,
one.
no, I'm not in a hurry. I don't feel like I want to listen to it right now.
Yeah. The Hoxteth time capsule is the winner of the Memorial Short Trip competition. Read by Colin Baker as well. I've still not listened to it.
I've not
It's
even
free.
downloaded it. Yeah.
So we've got no excuses, but yeah,
Not
it's
heard.
just going in not heard. And then why is Exodus there again? I made a mistake when I loaded all the images onto the tier list, but
Which
yeah,
can
there
you
we
blame
go.
them? There's so much. That's the tier list. That is 2023 all done and dusted. Now we can look at 2024 now.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll be coming back. Hopefully, a bit earlier in 2025. We took our time getting around to this one, and we didn't even listen to everything we bought.
Yeah. Yeah.
Shame on us, but we thought, if we keep putting it off, we'll never get it done. You've been waiting for it. You've wanted to know our thoughts on 2023 Big Finish as a whole. So, to the best of our ability,
This is it.
here it is. Yeah. I'm surprised by how much did go as high up as it did, to be fair. I thought we'd be filling out the middle tiers a little bit more. But, looking at it, maybe we were a bit harsh on 2023 before. Maybe it did have a fair bit going for
moments,
it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Had its stinkers as well. But, only one thing made it at the very bottom. So,
Yeah.
it could be worse. It's just a shame that once in future, the big 60th anniversary event is, mostly
the thing that drags it down, I'd
bottom
say.
heavy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it certainly soured my view of 2023 Big Finish as a whole. But I mean, 2024 has already given us more hope in that department, with Sontaras versus Rutans being this similar concept of, individual releases coming together to form a whole, but done a lot better.
Yeah. We'll be covering top 5, I'd reckon, end of June, July time, where we'll talk about our 5 favorites of the year so far. That'd be cool to see where we're at.
But until then, let us know what some of your favorite releases of 2023 were. Let us know if there's any you think we have rated far too highly and should be buried down at the very bottom of this list, or any we've put low down that we were a bit harsh on and you think deserve a second listen, or third listen in some cases, because some of them did get a second chance and they sadly did not live up to it. Let us know all your different thoughts and feelings about Big Finish in 2023. Especially your favorite release. I'd be intrigued to see.
Your favorite and least favorite, I'd say, or surprising release as well.
Give us the extremes.
Go for it.
The comment section is your oyster. Please leave a like while you're scrolling your way down there. Subscribe as well if you haven't already. And we'll see you in the next video.
Big Finish content, whether that be news or reviews or a throwback thing, whatever that will be. But plenty of Big Finish content coming up in the near future.
More 2023 content as well. We'll be looking back at the TV stories, the 60th anniversary specials, and the year as a whole, as a 60-year celebration of Doctor Who. Did it deliver?
As we're
Uh,
getting closer to sort of a new era of Doctor Who with Ncuti Gatwa,
mm,
let's look back at 2023.
yeah. Until then, take care of yourselves. We'll see you all next time. Goodbye.
Bye bye.